Yes, people, welcome back to the channel. And it's another Nottingham Forest video because last time I did one on Dan and Doy, you guys enjoyed it. So I hope you enjoyed this one as well because today it's been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano that Nottingham Forest have agreed a deal for 27-year-old Brazilian international Douglas Luiz from Juventus. And for me, this is another cracking signing for the Midlands club. Now, look, we know that Nuno Espirito Santos said, I need work. I need players in because my team are not ready yet. And yet they still went and dispatched Brentford comfortably on the weekend. However, they're back in Europe now. Nottingham Forest have aspirations of maintaining their place in the European standings in the Premier League come May 2026. And they needed players to come in. They've signed Callum Muendo, Amari Hutchinson, McAtee, and now Douglas Luiz. And he needs his own video because this guy is a top midfielder that hasn't seen the best of himself for the last 18 months, 2 years since he left Aston Villa. And now coming back to the Premier League under a manager like Nuno, a team like Nottingham Forest, well, the only thing I'm going to say is this signing fits Nottingham Forest to perfection. And I'm going to tell you why, because first of all, let's come to the news that was dropped by Fabrizio Romano. Douglas Luiz to Nottingham Forest. Here we go. Deal done now for around 30 million euros to Juventus. Understand, Nottingham Forest are planning for the Brazilian to travel today to get his medical done tomorrow on Thursday. Now, first of all, the price. Because in today's market, we're seeing big players go for much more money for that. We're seeing players with potential go for much more money than that. At 27 years of age, coming into this Nottingham Forest team, Douglas Luiz on the age bracket is coming into his prime now as a central midfielder that can play box to box, can play sitting in front of the back four and dictate and control the tempo, right? And they're getting him for 30 million euros. Now, look, yes, that price is coming down to his probably, I'm not going to say poor form, his lack of consistency and opportunities at Juventus. It hasn't really worked out for him. And look, he got the big move from Aston Villa, didn't quite work out, and that happens. It's football. But one thing that I will say about Douglas Luiz is that we saw his quality at Aston Villa. So for Nottingham Forest now to get him over to the Premier League again, 18 months later, right, for 30 million euros, which is around 25, 24 million pounds probably, right? That is a great signing in itself because they're not signing someone at 31, 32, 33. They're signing a player that is effectively in his peak right now, or if not, coming into his peak. And when I look at this now in terms of Douglas Luiz, he's probably coming back to the Premier League also with a point to prove because we all saw how good he was at Aston Villa. He was part of that midfield with Telemans, John McGinn. He was one of the main guys that was starting consistently at that football club, helping them get up the table back into Europe, right? And now he's going to come back to the Premier League with, right, I'm going to show you that I'm still a top-class player. I'm Premier League proven. I'm seasoned. So Nottingham Forest are not only getting a Premier League proven player, they're getting a 27-year-old coming into his prime, and they're getting someone that automatically, for me, starts for this football club. And I think that's what's essential. When Nottingham Forest are buying players now, they're looking at, right, who can come in and start, but who can also come in and elevate and lift the levels. And for me, Douglas Luiz does that. We know that at Aston Villa, he was linked to a lot of top clubs, right? Let's not get it twisted. We all know how good he was at Aston Villa. And you could say that Chelsea, Arsenal, Manchester United, teams that you could say in terms of the name and the stature are bigger than Nottingham Forest. These were linked to this player over the last 18 months, whether it was a loan move, a potential buy, signing him for Aston Villa. Arsenal were linked with heavily before they went and got Declan Rice, I believe it was. So this shows how highly rated Douglas Luiz was. And the thing is about Douglas Luiz is that I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. Now, look, I don't think he's the most amazing midfielder that is going to be like, right, you put him into any midfield and he's going to be the kingpin. He's going to be that guy that's going to be, the A-lister. But what I think he is he can be an A-lister when he's surrounded by good players around him. And that is what he has at Nottingham Forest, because the truth is, when you look at Nottingham Forest, right, they're a team that like to play on the counter-attack. We've seen them do that, yeah? With Elanga last season, Chris Wood, Hudson-Odoi, and breaking quick in transitions in Morgan Gibbs-White. But what I think he now does for Nottingham Forest is he gives them a different way of playing. They can still play quick in transition, long balls, lump it to Chris Wood, get Gibbs-White ball carrying, get, Doy on the ball, Amari Hutchison, and get crosses into the box. Yes, they can do that. They can still play the way that has made Nottingham Forest a success over the last couple of seasons. However, now Nuno has got a midfielder that is technical. He's good on the ball. He can dictate tempo at times, little passes into the pockets, give and go to the right back, right with the centre back. And he just gives Nottingham Forest an element of like, look, we don't have to play helter-skelter quick in transition. We can calm it down a little bit and have more control of games. Because I think that's what Nottingham Forest maybe have lacked. Look, they've been very good in the last 12 months, but I think it's playing one way. And I think when you're now in Europe and you're now a team in the Premier League that teams are going to adjust to, teams are going to adapt to, and try and find ways to negate your positives way of playing and try and stifle you. Now, with Douglas Luiz, they can have an element of controlling games and slow it down, but also do what they're good at in terms of hitting teams quick on the break, hitting teams in transition. Because one thing about Douglas Luiz is that he's a good passer of the ball. He's very competent. He's a Brazilian. He's a Brazilian international, and their technical ability is very high. You don't really get technical players in Brazil squads that haven't really got it. You'd probably say Casemiro at Man United is a player that lacks sort of that passing ability, even though he's good at long balls, but he's more of a destroyer. Douglas Luiz, for me, can do a bit of everything. And I think now this is the perfect type of signing for Nottingham Forest based on the midfield and the team they're trying to build. Now, look, Ibrahim Sangare started on the weekend alongside Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White playing in front of them. But Sangare is a good player. He can be a very good squad player still, can play in the league at times, can play in Europe. But what you need at Nottingham Forest now is depth. Not just any depth, depth in quality. And when you look at this midfield now, the Nottingham Forest are building in terms of their A-lister midfield, Elliot Anderson, Gibbs-White, and Douglas Luiz. I really like that midfield. I really like the direction they're going in. I think Elliot Anderson is very good, up and coming. He's got legs, he's dynamic, he's all action. And you need that type of player in the midfield, especially when you're playing in the Premier League. And Nottingham Forest, that type of team, like I said, they lack control at times. So you need players that are going to fight, going to be dogged, going to work hard. And we saw already on the weekend just gone, Elliot Anderson was contributing everywhere. And now he's got a partner next to him in Douglas Luiz, who can also do the same, but gives you an element of control. I'm going to sit in front of the back four more. I'm going to dictate the tempo. Elliot Anderson, you can be the energetic dog next to me and then look in front of us. We've got Morgan Gibbs-White. So when you look at dynamic midfields, you look at athletic midfields in the Premier League, this is right up there now because Gibbs-White and Anderson are two of the most athletic midfielders in the Premier League. And you've got Douglas Luiz, he's coming back now. He gives you that technical ability, that control, but can also get about the pitch. Now, when you go to Nottingham Forest away, people, any team in the Premier League, you are going to be up for a fight when you're coming up against this midfield. Because I'm telling you now, they're hungry to succeed. They've got energy. They're dynamic, like I said, and they're well drilled. They know exactly their roles when it comes to playing for Nottingham Forest. And I think when you look at Nuno and the way Unai Emery sometimes plays, which was the manager at Aston Villa and still is now, there isn't going to be a massive adaptation period for Douglas Luiz. I think he comes in and he disposes Ibrahim Sangare of his starting spot. And this is the midfield we are going to be seeing. And we have to say, people, this is a top-class midfield. They've kept Gibbs-White, signed him to an extension deal to 2027. You've got Elliot Anderson, they've signed from Newcastle, seems to be growing and blossoming, coming off the back of the European Under-21 victory of England. He is now growing into a regular starter at Nottingham Forest, and this could be his breakout season. And then you've now complemented it with a bit more of experience, know-how, Premier League dogfight, Douglas Luiz. So I think this is a brilliant signing for Nottingham Forest. I don't think you can really go wrong with the price, the age, the tactical versatility that he can give you now, playing long balls, but more controlling games. And you're playing under a manager that likes to play a 4-3-3, sometimes 4-2-3-1, also a back five at times. Douglas Luiz can play in all those formations. He can play in a pivot. He can play in a three-man midfield. He can play alone in the number 6. So I think Nottingham Forest have a really, really good player in their hands here. And I think he is going to make an instant impact. And I do think he starts How far he can take Nottingham Forest and how far Nottingham Forest can go as a team, we will find out. Obviously, they're going with great depth at the moment. They've still got Awani, they've got Callum Owendo, like I said, Hutchinson, McAtee. You know, they're still looking for potentially a fullback. Boy, Nuno has said to the Nottingham Forest owner, look, I've got you back into Europe, but now you need to back me and give me a base that I can be stable with, that I can compete both in the Premier League, but also in the Europa League, because, or the Conference League, whichever one they're in, sorry. But, you know, I'm in Spain. I forgot which one they're in right now. But they don't want to just take part. They want to be involved. They want to be competitive. And these fans are great, by the way. One thing I do love about Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, and Leeds United and teams like that is they have a core fan group from, you know, 40, 50, 60 years. These are a proper football club. And you need to show the fans that we have ambition. You know, we want to get big players in. We want to show you that we can entice the best in Europe. And I'm not saying all of them are the best in Europe, but they definitely have the potential to become top players and move on. Or you get players like Douglas Luiz who are on a revenge mission. Yes, he left Aston Villa. Yes, it didn't work out. But I still believe that there's a player in there for Nottingham Forest signing Douglas Luiz. And he fits that formation. Because as I said, this midfield here is very competitive. It has goals. It has creativity. It has a more element of control now. And they're going to make it tough for teams to beat them, but also outwork them. And when you can do that in the Premier League, on top of having Chris Wood, Dan Ndoye, Callum Owendo, you have Nico Williams, Murilo Milenkovic, Ola Aina. You have a very solid base there, full of athleticism, energy, strength, power. This is a very good team that Nottingham Forest are building. And guys, if you are liking this video, please make sure you hit the thumbs up. Please make sure you subscribe if you're new, because I think this signing suits Nottingham Forest like a glove. And I'm going to be making more videos on Nottingham Forest maybe next week, because I want to look at their whole window and the rebuild they're going through. But today is the here we go for Douglas Luiz. And I think this is a brilliant signing. Guys, make sure you like this video. Make sure you subscribe. And Nottingham Forest fans, let me know what you think in the comments. Please do. Au revoir.